Take over.
Thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
As most of you know, is this on? Okay. As most of you know, Dave's the one who's really good at speaking in front of people, so I'm usually better when I'm behind the piano, which is why some of it this morning will be behind the piano. I brought with me my little composition book that I used to write lyrics in and songs when I was growing up, because a lot of my faith journey can be described through the songs that I wrote as I was doing it. And there's a little bit of a forewarning that I was not always in a good place with my faith, and so some of the songs are not exactly uplifting, but I think they're important in understanding how I got to where I am. So my story for Christianity, of my little journey in Christianity, is actually very short. It wasn't until I was in college that I even really was introduced to this idea of Jesus as a Savior and as this all-loving God. When we have short stories, though, we know that they're really simple. So I'm going to try to share mine with you today. When I was growing up, there was no religion in my house. None whatsoever. We celebrated Christmas and Easter, but really, how do you get away from that when you have young kids, right? Commercials on TV, you kind of have to. So my mother was actually a Catholic. She was raised in a Catholic school, in a Catholic house, well, half Catholic. My grandmother was Catholic and my grandfather was Presbyterian, and they just agreed to be different and just go about it that way. My mom actually had a falling out with her nun in school for a pretty dicey reason when she was only in 2nd or 3rd grade. So she continued to go to church to please her parents, but after that she just dropped religion. She still believes in God. She's a very spiritual person. She's one of the most spiritual people I know, but she's not sure that organized religion is exactly the best way to show that spirituality and to experience it. Her thing, she's a chemistry teacher, and I remember rolling my eyes and saying, oh, no more science when I was little, but she said, you know, how could a whole universe that's created on only 4 bases of DNA, you know, adenine, guanine, cytosine, those things, how could that just be chance? She doesn't think it could. And now that I'm older, I definitely agree that it's just too complicated to just be chance. But when I was a kid, I was like, yeah, stuff happens. So my dad grew up in a house with a Unitarian mother. She was pretty crazy liberal. She was an awesome lady. And an atheist father. So my dad had no church when he was growing up, but he did go to several Sunday schools. He belonged to several youth groups, but he told me it was for 2 reasons. Either he was chasing a girl, or it was because they were going on a ski trip. So his motivations were not exactly pure. But when I was growing up, my parents, and they still are, they were big cyclists. We rode bikes, tandem bikes, every night, 16 miles after school. My mom would be on the front of one, I'd be behind her. My dad and my sister would be on another. And it was actually a really great time. I loved those times with my mom, even though I'd complain about it afterwards, that my rear end would hurt and all that. But we'd do spelling words and math problems and talk about life. We'd make up stories. It was a really good time to connect with my mom. I had no idea what my dad and my sister talked about. But on Saturdays, my parents went off on their own rides, and then on Sundays, we did family rides with groups of friends, and we went out 30 miles, and so we were always riding. So church was never even on the radar for me. I mean, I knew my friends went to church. I had no idea really what it was, and I was like, yeah, I have church. It's called On the Bike. So friends would ask me to go to Bible study or Bible school with them Sunday mornings and go to church with them, and I always said, well, I can't because I'm biking with my parents. And that's pretty much how it went through my young life. I was asked several times by kids to go to Sunday school, and I said no. Then when I was in 2nd grade, I was asked over to a friend's house, just a play date with dinner. And we sat down to dinner. It was just hot dogs or something. And I sat down with her and her mom and her dad. We all were sitting, we all had our food, so I took a ginormous bite of my hot dog. And the mother got so angry with me. She reprimanded me right there. We do not eat in this house before we say grace. And I'm thinking, grace, good, are we good? Like, I don't know what this is. And from that point on, that mother forbade her daughter to see me. She said, you cannot hang out with that girl. She is bad news, whatever. I'm 8, so, you know, I have no idea. So now I go home and I'm crying, and my mom kind of explains to me this idea of people saying grace before dinner. And I said, oh, so it's a religion thing. It's a God thing. I'm not so sure that I'm liking this, you know? If there's this God that's going to be so mad because I took a bite of hot dog before I said grace, I'm not sure I want to be involved in that. So instead of the bike ride just becoming, well, that's what I'm doing on Sundays, that was my excuse. And I was glad that I had it. I didn't want to participate in some sort of thing that had this angry God. When I was in 5th grade, I had a really good friend. Her name was Julie, and she was very religious, but we just stayed away from that in our friendship. And I had gone away for spring break and brought her back just a little, probably 50-cent little silver ring for her to wear, just as a gift. And that summer, like every summer, she went to her church camp, and she was telling me about it when she came home, and she was sobbing when she came home to tell me. They had spent all of Friday and Saturday at this church camp telling these kids about the horrors of hell and how terrible hell was, and hell is, you know, hell is this, hell is burning, hell is pain, hell is torture. And I guess Saturday night at this camp, they switched to, here's who's going to hell. And they're telling these kids who are in 5th grade who's going to hell. And one of them was any of your friends who don't go to church. And Julie told me that at the instant they said that, the ring that I gave her broke. And to her, that was a symbol that I was straight down. No questions asked. I was going straight to hell. And I was a little disturbed by this. I got a little more upset, and I started to get really defensive, thinking, I don't need some sort of, you know, I don't need you to pray for me. I don't need you to save my soul. You know, I really got frustrated with people telling me that sort of thing. So I continued to be upset about that sort of thing. And when I was in 8th grade, I wrote a song called, it actually was really only lyrics. It was called, Don't Call Me By My Name. And the chorus was, don't call me by my name, boy, because I am not so sure that where I come from, who I am, is absolutely pure. I know I am more confused than you've ever been. I feel anything but good, yet so far from sin. And one of the verses was, I'm not quite sure as to who I am, but I do have a life. Let me lead it as I wish, because that is my right. I wander by myself sometimes. I chose a different path. You all want me to turn around, but there's no going back. You owe me this at least because I put up with you so long. Remember, just because I'm different, that doesn't make me wrong. And so I continued to kind of just define myself as, in a very religious town, as one of the people who didn't go to church. In fact, sometimes I would go for walks Sunday mornings by myself, past as many churches as I could, to be like, I'm not in church. Like, kind of, like, I felt like I was sticking it to them, like I needed to do that. And looking back on it, I was like, wow, that was not mature. You know, I was in 8th grade, not really with it in terms, I mean, you know, every 8th grader thinks they know everything, and I certainly did, and I kind of took it to the extreme. When I was in 9th grade, I had a boyfriend, and he was Catholic. Turns out he wasn't supposed to have a girlfriend, so I was secret. That was pretty exciting. But it was the silliest thing. It was this email survey that he had sent, you know, that friends were passing around. Just like little questions like, what's your favorite color? What kind of chair are you sitting in? What's your favorite food? Like silly things like that. And one of them was, do you believe in God? And I wrote, no, not really.